Sinjonjo, Politics and the Last Dance. How Survival Politics Turned Against the Constitution. By reason, Wafa President Emmerson Mnangagwa and Defense Minister Oppah Muchinguri share one defining attribute: survival. Not survival in the ordinary biological sense, but survival as political discipline. They belong to a generation forged in war, tempered by betrayal, and perfected in the unforgiving ecosystem of ZANU-PF's internal politics. Around them, giants rose and fell. Josiah Tongogara perished before independence. Herbert Chitepo died in the early years of the state. Edgar Takere faded into exile and eventual death. Edison Zimbabwe disappeared from the political chessboard. Solomon Mujuru died under mysterious circumstances. And countless others who once appeared immovable simply vanished from relevance or from life itself. Mnangagwa endured. Oppah endured. They endured not because politics was kind, but because they mastered its oldest lesson: survival is not accidental. It is practiced. Edison Zimbabwe explained it best. He likened ZANU-PF politics to a 1970s dance floor where revelers moved to the Sinjonjo rhythm with okapi knives hidden in their pockets. The dance required constant vigilance, both thumbs pointed backward, eyes forever watching over one's shoulder. Every movement carried awareness that the next embrace might be fatal. ZANU-PF Sinjonjo, Zimbabwe warned. Tamba wakachenjera. Dance carefully. It was not metaphor, it was instruction. Dinyan and the first lesson of absence. The Dinyan meeting in Cholocho in 2004 remains the purest classroom of Sinjonjo politics. Provincial leaders gathered to elevate Mnangagwa to the vice presidency. Confidence was absolute. Certainty filled the air. Flora Buka, one of the attendees, even encountered the wise Cephas Msipa on her way and told him proudly that they were going to inaugurate Mnangagwa. Msipa asked a simple question: will Mnangagwa himself be there? Of course, she said. He wasn't. Everyone who attended paid the price. Provincial chairpersons were paid. Careers collapse. Buka herself vanished into political obscurity. Jonathan Moyo was expelled. Mnangagwa was demoted to a ministry of rural housing that barely existed, a political Siberia staffed by a handful of civil servants and little else. Yet Mnangagwa survived. Sinjonjo's first rule had been obeyed: never stand where the knife is expected to fall. Tingoringo and the destruction of Josiah Mujuru. The next great lesson came through Oppah Muchinguri's Tingoringo counter-strategy. By 2013, Josiah Mujuru had achieved what few thought possible. Through Commissar Webster Shamu's meticulous restructuring, she controlled the party machinery from the lowest cell to the Politburo itself. Her ascendancy appeared inevitable. Muchinguri understood what Mujuru did not. Power in ZANU-PF is never secured by structures alone. It is secured by perception. Her masterstroke was simple. She recruited Grace Mugabe. The rallies began. Weekly spectacles of denunciation. Loyalty theater masquerading as political mobilization. Cameras rolled. Crowds ululated. Structures shifted allegiance in real time, not through policy debate, but through survival instinct. Those who cheered loudest survived longest. Within 6 months, Mujuru was politically extinguished. Tingoringo had worked, not through ideology, through fear, through spectacle, through survival logic. G40, Lacoste, and the army's entry into Sinjonjo. History repeated itself with different actors. Jonathan Moyo emerged as the intellectual architect of the G40 faction. Grace Mugabe became its public face. Weekly rallies denounced Mnangagwa with escalating ferocity. He was labeled corrupt, murderous, unelectable, a political relic awaiting extinction. Mnangagwa was dismissed in November 2017. It should have been the end. Instead, it triggered the army. What followed has been described as a military intervention. That is only partially accurate. The military did not merely move tanks. It moved legitimacy. And legitimacy required the people. Zimbabweans were mobilized into the streets, not to determine the outcome, but to sanctify it. Parliament followed. Impeachment loomed. Mugabe resigned. The tanks had acted, but the people had validated. This was Sinjonjo at institutional scale. The army had gaslighted the masses into believing they were restoring democracy, when in fact they were stabilizing survival. It worked, because survival had once again adapted. The Constitution, the last obstacle to survival. Today, survival politics faces its final adversary. Not a rival faction, not an ambitious vice president, not a mobilized first lady. The Constitution itself. Term limits were designed to end political permanence. They introduced something Sinjonjo had never needed to confront before: inevitability. Time. The current constitutional amendment effort did not begin as revolution. It began modestly. A 2-year extension, then 7 years. Then structural alterations transferring presidential selection from the people to parliament. What began as adjustment has revealed itself as transformation. Survival is no longer fighting rivals. It is fighting constitutional expiration. The irony of architects and survivors. The intellectual architect of this transformation is Jonathan Moyo, a man who once documented in forensic detail how electoral manipulation sustained executive survival. His own writings exposed the fragility of political legitimacy built on procedural engineering rather than public consent. Yet today, he defends structural alteration as constitutional evolution. This is not contradiction. It is Sinjonjo. Survival requires ideological flexibility. Principles are permanent only until they become inconvenient. The Great Reversal. From gaslighting the masses to gaslighting the army. In 2017, survival politics required persuading the people. Today, survival politics faces a different requirement. It must persuade the army, not to intervene, but to remain aligned with survival. This is the Great Reversal. In 2017, the army gaslighted the masses into legitimizing intervention. In 2026, survival politics may attempt to gaslight the army into legitimizing constitutional circumvention. Not through tanks, through silence, through neutrality that protects individuals rather than institutions. This is the most delicate moment in Zimbabwe's constitutional history, because the army now stands where the people once stood. As the final source of legitimacy. The army's institutional choice. Armies do not derive legitimacy from individuals. They derive legitimacy from constitutions. The Zimbabwe Defense Forces oath is not sworn to personalities. It is sworn to constitutional order. This distinction matters profoundly, especially in the wake of the bill removing the power of the army to uphold the Constitution. Armies that protect constitutions remain national institutions. Armies that protect individuals become historical footnotes. The army's role is not to determine political outcomes. It is to ensure constitutional processes remain intact. Nothing more, nothing less. The last Sinjonjo. Sinjonjo politics taught generations of leaders how to survive rivals, factions, betrayals, and purges. It taught vigilance. It taught patience. It taught absence at critical moments. It taught survival. But Sinjonjo never had to confront constitutional inevitability. The Constitution does not operate like factional politics. It cannot be outmaneuvered indefinitely. It cannot be persuaded. It cannot be intimidated. It cannot be gaslighted. It either stands or it falls. If it falls, survival politics will achieve its ultimate victory, but it will also achieve its ultimate failure. Because survival without legitimacy is not stability, it is suspension, temporary, fragile, unsustainable. The final dance. Zimbabwe now stands at the edge of Sinjonjo's final dance, not between rival factions, not between competing politicians, but between survival and constitutional order. Sinjonjo taught men how to survive each other. But no dance teaches men how to survive the Constitution. And that, perhaps, is the final lesson survival politics must now confront.